Hey, what's up, everybody? It's me, Jeff, the SP Spaz, and welcome back to Ask Jeff Thursdays. Um, this is the day of the week that I upload an answer to a great question by one of my subscribers or other people that ask me questions. So if you have a question, leave it in the comments or anywhere else on my channel or any other way to reach me. I also have a Facebook group about this channel that at the time I'm recording this has been dormant for a long time, but I'm trying to reinvigorate it. Hopefully I'll get questions there too. But I still have a backlog of questions from many years ago that I hope to eventually answer most of. There were a few that, they were not really, I don't think, trying to get an answer really in the first place. But a lot of them are good questions, and this week's one definitely is. And when I highlight particular questions and say, oh, this is a really good question, I don't mean to disparage the other questions, just in case, I answer yours and I don't say this is a really good question. I'm not putting you down, so just so you know that. So anyway, this week's question is, what do you need most from your loved ones in your life? And that's a really good one because this is one, again, I don't claim to speak for every ESFP and definitely not every SP type, but I do think this is something that gives me an opportunity to answer in a way that a lot of other, I would say especially SFPs, can relate to. And I've heard this sentiment from quite a few ESFPs and ISFPs, especially, and not that nobody else can relate to it, but I'm just saying those types may be the most, especially ESFPs, because that's what I am. So the short answer, of course, sounds a little trite because I could say, well, from loved ones, what I need is love. But people say, well, how do you best give that? And there's a lot of different suggestions. There's that love languages stuff or, other things like that. But when it comes down to it, I actually think that it was answered pretty well in a book by David Kersey called Brains and Careers, when he talked about the ESFPs as the tactical coworker. And I don't have that book with me as it is right now, but in a future video, I'll actually quote what it says about. But the gist of it, the reason I remember that is because there's a thing in there about a feedback loop, basically, I believe was the phrase used, where ESFPs basically, we want to entertain people, so we want to entertain an audience of some kind, but we have to get a response from the audience that sort of validates what we're doing and gives us a kind of a clue as to where to go from there. So we're improvisational and operate off of the responses we get. So if that's why it's kind of ironic me doing these videos where nobody is listening or watching this as I'm doing it, because I don't really have that. So I've got to do this based on sort of future feedback or past feedback, since I'm not actually getting any present feedback. And that's one reason actually why I'd like to keep my videos rather short if I can, because what happens when I make longer videos where I just kind of keep talking is that I just sort of ramble on about things that pop into my head, which may or may not be useful to anybody. And it's not that that's overall a bad thing, but I'd like to keep it kind of more on point with what people actually want to see and hear. I can use this channel as just a venting, thing for me to talk about whatever is on my mind. And sometimes I'll do that, but I don't want it to be the only thing that I do. So back to the question about what do we need from loved ones, or what do I need from attention, and the kind of attention that basically sort of is supportive, somebody to remind me that not just that I have worth, but I guess specifically that the things that I enjoy sort of being the things that make up my self-image are something that benefits them and other people. So people telling me that I'm funny and entertaining and generous, and that I am somebody that they enjoy hanging out with, enjoy being around, enjoy talking to. And again, some people may hear that and say, well, that sounds really, they're one of two things. Either they say it sounds really simple, like there's got to be more to it than that, or they say, oh, it sounds really egotistical or narcissistic or whatever, And I've heard those kind of things before, again, usually from other types, because people who are ESFPs usually understand what I'm talking about and don't label it one of those two things. But let me address those real quick. People that say, oh, there's got to be this deeper thing to it, it's not that simple. If you want to speculate as to what particular neurons in the brain create this particular need or whatever, that's a whole separate issue. But it really is basically that simple when it comes down to how do I feel good? I mean, I've had people in recent weeks and months, because of the huge weight loss that I've had, and just me, getting smaller clothes that fit and things. I've had people say I look like a new person. I've had people say I have a spring in my step that I didn't used to have, that I have more confidence. All of those things are like sort of validations of me as a person. And things like that, people tell me I can be buzzing off that for weeks. I mean, honestly, like, it does not take much for me to feel really good based on what somebody says. So I guess if you go back to the love languages thing, that's kind of the words of affirmation thing. I used to say that most of those things all seem kind of even to me, although probably words of affirmation and physical touch were slightly ahead of the others. But I don't know. I've had some things recently that have made me think maybe that words of affirmation really is like my number one love language. And that may not be true of every ESFP, obviously, or even the majority. I don't know. But I can think of certain celebrity examples. To use a tragic one, I can say Chris Farley, because he's somebody that, according to the people that were closest to him, he basically needed to be reminded like once an hour or something that he was funny and entertaining and that people liked him. That's kind of an extreme example, because obviously we're not all like that in terms of needing it once an hour. But it's just sort of a matter of how full the bucket is. That's another, reference to something that I heard, is that, bucket filling, or basically, somebody's self-esteem or self-confidence being, validated by somebody else, or more than one somebody else. So again, I don't need it to be once an hour most of the time, but that's kind of, I guess, sort of the level of mental health, comes into play there. And level is probably not the right word there, but I think you know what I mean. Hopefully you do. That not everybody is the same in terms of how much they need or how often they need it. But I would say for me that just enough that I don't get to a point where I start to really doubt those things, that I doubt that I have any worth as a person, that I doubt that anyone benefits from my existence. Those are big things to me. Just being somebody that somebody wants to spend time with. It doesn't have to be some deep thing, like I said. Just somebody telling me, you're one of the people in my life I like talking to. I mean, that makes me feel really good. So what I need from the loved ones in my life is believe them telling me and showing me that they want to be with me, that they hang out with me, they want to do fun things with me. And it doesn't always have to be my choice of what we do. For me, it's more important that they want to hang out and do things with me. There are certain things I won't do, and other things that I'm willing to, but they're not my favorite things, but I'll kind of compromise and do those things. And then there's other things that I love no matter what. So it really depends. But anyway, that's what I would say I need most from loved ones in my life. And so I would say, if you know an ESFP or someone, who kind of has that need, reach out to them. And, even if you don't necessarily feel like you really want to go out and hang out with them today, like maybe you're having a bad day or so, maybe do it anyway, just sort of boost them up, and maybe in response, you'll get sort of boosted up at the same time. At least that's one thing I would hope for. And that's definitely a subject I can talk more about, and I will in a future video and probably many future videos, because that subject, I think, is one of those misunderstood ones in a lot of ways. People doing the thing about saying it's narcissistic or egotistical or whatever, because it's really not that. And I see now I'm past the 10-minute mark, so I want to say I'll do another video more about that specific thing. I already did one several years back that you can watch on my channel that's called Extroversion Does Not Mean Social Wizard. And that one, the main point of which is not even just about ESFPs, but about extroverts in general, and kind of addresses some of those things about what extroverts' needs are. Because there's a lot of stuff online about the needs of introverts. I'd say it's kind of slanted a little in that direction. Of course, obviously I'm biased too, so maybe I just see it that way because it seems like, but anyway. So that's the answer to that. Once again, if you have a question, put it in the comments, and I will try to answer it in a future video, or just answer in reply to a comment. If it's a simple enough question, I can probably do it that way. But anyway, if you haven't already, subscribe, like the video, share it with all your friends and your grandmother and everybody who enjoys videos of random dudes sitting at a desk somewhere talking about what they want from their loved ones. And I'll see you next time.